Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 626. Tread softly around sorcerers. The last little statement caused a bit of an uproar, some of the nobility and royalty declaring it savagery, more of them claiming it to be justice, and some stating that such an egregious overreach should be dealt with by the nobility, as is their duty or right depending on the speaker. That last bit is divided on whether or not they could have done worse or simply executed the ones involved, but it simply adds more noise to the proceedings until the Empress raises a hand for silence. She gets it. Long has it been tradition for sorcerers to handle their own justice. The sheer power our sons, brothers, and nephews of the Dark Forest, and now several more forests as well, can bring to bear means that the oldest and most disquieting truth of noble rank is spoken of plainly in their presence. In that, for all the rules we use to not fall into excess, stupidity, and unworthiness, it all tracks back to our capacity for violence. And sorcerers are difficult to match. The Empress says lightly, and there are several in the crowd that recall her personally stopping a sorcerer with no casualties, and before her guard could even catch up. The same sorcerer that years later had gone on to openly create 2 more living forests, and assisted in the creation of a third so massive it can be seen from near anywhere in the galaxy with the naked eye. Be that as it may, my Empress, it has long been a difficult balancing act of keeping justice, duty, and the wants of these obscenely powerful adepts in accordance. One few people outside insane asylums will ever argue that a sorcerer isn't in some way justified for their ferocious and infamous retaliations, coupled with how easily they return to society as a fully productive member after achieving their wants lends credence to this. But we have our laws for a reason. We have judgment for a reason. I do not argue that a child abuser doesn't deserve the full attention of the very sorcerer they created. In fact, I would tie up such a wretch and hand the aggrieved party a rusted knife before departing the room if I was certain of the situation. But therein lies the problem: certainty. Even during the least dangerous and deadly examples of sorcerer's retaliation, there have been tragic amounts of collateral damage. When the city shaker unveiled himself, he had but one target. He directly killed 20 people. But indirectly killed hundreds, injured thousands, and left potentially millions impoverished by his rampage. To say nothing of the cost on infrastructure and sheer damage to the very capital within which your palace is situated, my Empress. I do not have the figures and sums ready in front of me, but I imagine it was many millions, if not billions of credits to repair the damage to the power system, foundations, sewage, and more to the capital. And that was a single, almost instantly aborted sorceress retaliation. One target, 20 deaths, thousands of injuries, and many lives ruined. "Excuse me," Jacob says as he starts weaving around the crowds a little and takes a breath. "So in summation, what your concern is whether or not the sorcerers have done due diligence as to whom they are retaliating against and their guilt?" the Empress asks as she glances directly towards the Amaral family. Moments later, Jacob reaches the projector area. "Excuse me," he says. "I am Jacob Ch.626-630, second sorcerer of Sobin Ride, and currently employed as a ship captain for the Undaunted. I am also an escapee from the Supple Satisfaction, and personally responsible for the naming and capture of a large number of the now executed or soon-to-be executed individuals from the Supple Satisfaction." Escapee? I had been reduced to a child. I was also a disobedient, willful brat as a child. I hid from my caretakers, then overheard conversations that let me know without a doubt that they were not friends of mine. So I flew away under cover of darkness, or ran beneath the trees and basically got away as best I could. But I couldn't get off planet as a prepubescent boy, and so I had to find a way to fight back. And I did. In the process, I infiltrated the organization and began not only sabotaging it, but gathering information on customers, owners, and staff alike. I didn't have all of it, but many of the higher-ups held a great deal of blackmail material over the others, a form of mutually assured destruction on the legal and informational sense. That is what was used to identify the perpetrators. Their own damn lists, which as far as I'm concerned is basically adjacent to a signed confession. "What manner of sabotage did you perform?" A noble woman questions him. He doesn't know quite enough about Apok formal dress off the top of his head to tell if she's noble, landed noble, Amwan, royal, or whatever. Through bribery, seduction, a convenient arrest, and barely dodging attempted murder charges, I got put in charge of recruiting low-level security. I filled that part of their organization with barely sentient nitwits who knew just enough to lie hard enough to avoid getting fired. I also gathered information and flagged some of the actually competent sorts as potential police agents to get them either killed or thrown out of the organization if they weren't yet privy to the darker secrets therein. Jacob answers. I see. Anything else to contribute, Sir Sorcerer? The noble asks. For now, no, but I will speak again if my understanding will be of use. Jacob says, and Therasimar, the larger's hand reaches his shoulder. Thank you for your assistance, good sorcerer. Incidentally, son, after this, perhaps we could speak further. Ship captain to ship captain about possible ways we might. Oh, your pardon, my empress. My passion for my duties overtook me. Therasimar, the larger says before wincing a little. No apology is needed, young Amaral. Were such passions more rampant in the empire, then only wealth, justice, and victory would grow, the empress states. However, thank you for veering the topic towards duty and the aforementioned justice. There is some disquiet as the empress carefully scans the room and nods. It is clear that the world of Lilb Tulob requires a firmer, more direct hand in its ruling, that allowing the purely council, bureaucratic, and business-minded governmental affairs of that world has failed. Many of the higher-ranked individuals within the supple satisfaction were the judges and lawmakers. An oversight and accountability are needed. Therefore, we now move into the next topic. Which houses shall be granted the responsibility of the sword and the ban upon Lilb Tulelb? Who among you has the kin and kind capable of removing the blemishes upon that world to make it sparkle once again, and to keep it as a jewel of the empire? Today we found new houses. I will hear names and the accolades that make them worthy lawbringers. Now then, my nobles, who shall be joining us in these chambers? Everyone starts talking to everyone. Queen Amaral turns back to her family, something the other noble and royal matriarchs and patriarchs have already done, and nods to them. They nod back, and Therasimar the smaller is handed off to Therasimar the larger. Why is everyone backing out? Arden Karm asks. This is going to take a while, and we only have to be here now if we want to be. This is tedious and generally only the true business of the family head, the heir, and maybe the spare. And that, of course, leaves much of the family just crowding the area otherwise, which means we can take the time to reacquaint ourselves with our baby brother. Therasimar says with a smile. So you're not the spare or heir? Wait, how do the Apok do this? Lineal primogeniture, or following the firstborn. I am eighth-born. Mother had 2 small-sized batches of 2 eggs the first 2 times she laid, and then a full 4 as she began to grow comfortable as queen. I hatched last as the youngest child of the 3rd batch, Therasimar notes before pausing. Or at least that was the assumption before the cloning made everything muddled. Wayne, this is going to be rather complicated and confusing for a time. No doubt, big brother. Now let me hold my little brother. Now, a petite Apok woman begins, and Therasimar the larger chuckles as he hands over Therasimar the smaller. Don't you start with me. Of course not, O mistress of the... Do not. Of course, Therasimar the larger notes. Still, our dear brother needs a tour of the home, the gardens, the kitchens, so a snack can be snuck when needed, the library, the throne, the audience chambers, and of course, he needs to meet our dedicated staff. Even if he has perfect memories of the layout, some rooms have changed and we have some new hires. But first, his room, your old 9-year-old things are already there. Does this mean I need to bring in my uniform? Therasimar the smaller asks. Nana, you have a uniform? His sister asks. The Undaunted gave it to me when we were helping on Centris. It's bright yellow and orange, and I've got all sorts of special mushrooms growing on it. And what do? They cushion things really, really well. Other sorcerers tested them by firing iron chunks out of coil guns at them, and they just bounce off the mushrooms. Organic armor? Over an already well-armored and axiom-protected suit, what he's got is a high-profile private stream uniform Basically, a large overcoat with pants, hat, and gloves. With the collar up, then only the eyes are really exposed, and the rest is well defended normally. The buckle of the belt has a totem that absorbs thermal, electrical, and filters away toxic clouds. Cool, and there's armor plating all over it and plenty of spaces for expanded pockets for the sake of carrying gear. Finally, the wearer can actually shuck any part of the uniform instantly in case they're restrained by it. Add those mushrooms to it, and he's borderline impervious in the outfit. Or at the very least, will need a lot of special attention to so much as scratch. Jacob explains. Why high profile? One of the Amaral siblings asks. To keep track of them, Jacob answers. No, as in, what makes it high profile and what's the difference between high profile and standard private stream uniforms? The difference is color, and it's worn to signify that the stream is going completely all out, as in using the biggest, most dangerous and collateral-prone weapons we have. Okay? A private stream is a persona of a young, eager soldier. They look and sound like a child, but the closest to an actual child we have in the position are soldiers that have had too many healing comas and now have childish bodies. The private stream uses social stealth to be a low-profile bodyguard and field agent that can accompany anyone or be seen anywhere without being intrusive. But there are actually highly armored and heavily armed combatants who each have a direct link to an intelligence officer who's feeding them constant information, making them screamingly effective and highly aware at all times. Do the Undaunted have children in their ranks? Cadets, they're trainees below the age of enlistment. They go through basic drill exercises and are taught things like navigation and proper call signs in military code. But the only way they'll ever see action is if the city the program is in is attacked. They will get called in to help the evacuation and get civilians moving to safety while also joining them there. Are cadet programs really that popular? On worlds where there's a significant Undaunted presence they are. Zalwar, Albrith, Centris, Lacran, 297 and VUCSA 5 all have healthy cadet programs. Granted, each one is fairly different. VUCSA 5 is completely under Undaunted control, as is Lacran 297. But Lacran is recovering from a millennia of ever-progressing genetic damage and being regressed to primitivism, and you look like you have a question. Isn't Lacran 297 where nearly every primal in the galaxy is making a pilgrimage to? Then turned around because another Primaris primal showed up. Yes, Primaris primal? It was a semi-official designation for the first primal, but then two other first primals showed up, so it's in the Undaunted official vocabulary. Grandmother of the Nagasha, Emmanuel Skitterway of the Earthani, and Claudia Greatpincer of the Wimparas are the three Primaris primals. First of their species, but not the last. Has anyone figured out how more Earthani or Wimparas primals emerge? Not yet, but if it's like the Nagasha, it will be years before another shows up. And that's a big if. There was something else fueling the rush to Lacran, one of the Amaral daughters says. I think the first child between Isarazin, a primal Nagasha, who was last on that Lacran, and Emmanuel is already a primal Nagasha male. That would do it. Wait, do primals with primals produce primals? Arden Karmas? That has happened before, I believe. Terrace Amaral the larger states. But it is not a guarantee. But it is higher than average, for all that there is anything average about a primal. Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 627. Tread softly around sorcerers. Why are you doing that? Jacob asks as he suddenly has Ricky standing on his shoulders. Just checking in on things. The guards were recalled from the Lorganian estate. Turns out when the judges and bureaucrats left over after the big grab are looking down the barrel of getting a new boss, they start thinking more in kissing tail terms than butt-covering ones. So you got the run of the place? Jacob asks as more and more Amaral siblings turn to see the spectacle of an Agurk child standing on and speaking to a Valran man. Yeah, without the security there, we quickly found everything available and even cleaned up after ourselves after leaving. I also left a little something to pay for the inconvenience of the broken things. It was all probably insured. Hence, but I hate sloppy work, Ricky says before glancing around and grinning. Been a while since I was here last. You are familiar with this place? Therasamarl the larger asks. I am, before your time though, back when your grandmother was still a freshly crowned queen. Ricky notes before hopping off Jacob's shoulders, landing with a little roll and springing up to his feet. Does this mean you're going to help with the tour? Therasamarl the smaller asks, and Ricky smiles wide. You know what? Yes. Yes, I will. Your family will tell you how it is now. I'll tell you what it was then. Were you close to grandmother? Fairly close for a short while, but we drifted apart. I'd need to be in a police lineup to be positively identified by her. There are no portraits of any Agurk that I'm aware of in the Hall of Allies. I didn't say she liked me, just that we were close. Don't worry though, Mini Theris is a sorcerer. I'm a sorcerer. What did those hilarious human movies say? Ape not kill ape? Same thing, Ricky assures them. What is your name? The organization had me down as Ricky Monkey. Just call me Ricky. That's nice. What's your name? Junior. And this is a game to you, isn't it? What I did has been undone, and I am no threat to you now. Let me have my fun, Ricky insists. Therasamarl the smaller narrows his eyes at him and tilts his head. Ricky matches the movement, and then Theris tilts his head back the other way. Ricky follows, and after a bit, Therasamarl the smaller nods. Oh, he's being honest. He won't hurt anyone, take anything, or break anything. He's just having some fun and relaxing after learning a lot of things he didn't like. Yeah, I need to have a talk with my grandson. A serious talk about serious things and shaming not only the family name, but discarding and disregarding our traditions. Then another with my son for allowing them. Then my father to see if he had anything to do with it. And why in the actual hell I spent so many years with my mind a blasted heath and my body the plaything of degenerates. It's going to be a slog no matter how it goes. So I'm going to have my fun now so I can at least approach the situation with a smile, if you don't mind. Who are you? To you, Ricky Monkey, Winarwe buddy to Therasamarl the tiny one, and very much a friend that will on occasion vanish because he's doing a lot of things on his own. Ricky answers, and there is some quick debate. Fine, but I do want to hear stories about how you know what you know about our home. But if I did that, you'd find out my legal... Actually, do I still have a legal name? I was declared dead. In Apuk jurisdictions, a dead person being found alive later just means that you switch a couple bits on the forms, the same for most others, but not in the Quarthan Triangle. Why is that important? They're, I think, 20,000 light years away? One of the Amaral sisters asks. 22 currently. Therasamarl the larger states. What did you get up to there? In the Quarthan Triangle and its composite nations are incredibly insular. I visited numerous historical sites and museums, took a few pictures in and around their parliament buildings, and said hello to a few of their more influential citizens. You know, the tourist thing. Ricky, are you a professional spy? No, but very good guess, Ricky says. Now then, to the tour. The room down there and on the left was once the room where the Queen Amaral of the time, Jadi Amaral, would invite the prettiest and most appealing young men she could find. She had an interest in painting, and while not very good at it, it also gave her a legal and acceptable excuse to stare. And pretty boys and handsome men wearing nothing but their hands for dignity and not be called out for it. Thank you. It is not that now, though. It is a dueling chamber now for the practice of inner-ship weaponry, as full-size war swords are unsuited for shipboard combat. Therasamarl the larger replies in a clipped tone. That's a good change. What kind of swords do you use? Curved single hand? Long-pointed? Short blade and dagger in melee. If you're rushed up to then, weapons with reach are a hindrance. You need to be able to deal lethal damage regardless of how much or how little room you have to maneuver. Therasamarl the larger states. Can you show me? Therasamarl the smaller asks. Certainly. After all, the actual blades are under lock, and the practice blades are only dangerous if one goes truly out of their way to hurt someone else, such as reinforcing or modifying them with axiom. That had the ring of a story to it. Oh, nothing extravagant. I was undergoing drills when some pirates we had been pursuing revealed themselves to have had a second ship laying in ambush. I was an off-duty bridge officer at that exact moment, and when the boarding started, I was going through blade forms. I did not have time to retrieve more traditional weapons, so I reinforced my practice weapons and proceeded to bludgeon my attackers into submission, then appropriated their more traditional weapons and assisted in the countering of the other boarding parties. Did that get you a promotion? Theresa Marl the Smaller asks, even as the larger opens the door to the training room and indicates the racks. Each set of racks has a differently shaped weapon, and on the opposite side of the room are a pair of the actual weapon. One indicated to have blunt edges, and the other indicated to be a proper sharp blade. Both of the real weapons are all locked up each, but the lock is a tiny thing that even without Axiom is more just a hindrance to stop them from being picked up by accident rather than avoiding them being stolen. Not immediately, it was a contributing factor to my promotion to first officer, which later led to my promotion to captaincy, and that eventually led the way to my current rank of Commodore. Everything is connected. Each choice you make leads to later choices, and the continuity of one's life can be easily traced. What if other people make choices for you? Theresa Marl the Smaller asks. Then what you do in response is what counts the most and takes your measure. And what measure do I have for, well, you've escaped. You're not gibbering with madness, sobbing with endless despair, or raging in unending wrath. Instead, you're looking forward to rebuild your life and reconnect. That is a very, very good thing. You are making the correct choice. Is there a wrong choice? Running away and becoming a brooding vigilante who mass murders people at the slightest inclination, they might even be remotely like the people that hurt you, would be a wrong choice, Ricky says. How old were you when you were de-aged? Theresa Marl the Larger asks. Older than you, by a lot, Ricky answers. Again, who are you? Again, Ricky, as far as you're concerned. That caveat just makes it worthy of further questions. I know, right? There's no polite way for you to pry, even as I get more and more suspicious right in front of you all. I'm basically waving a big sign that says, hey, this is really weird and suspicious, but you have to ignore it. I love it, Ricky says cheerfully. I can tell them who you are. Theresa Marl the Smaller states. But you won't, because we're sorcerers, brothers in shroom and spore. Ricky cheers. You know that if you do too much, I will, right? Theresa Marl the Smaller says, and Ricky sighs. Don't worry, I'm only going to tease and teach. That's it. Is that allowed, your most royal of highnesses? Ricky asks with a big smile. Oh boy, Jacob notes. Maybe we should get back to my family. They'll probably be worried, and we also have to look into reuniting the others, Arden Karm suggests. But their family heads are caught up in the massive discussion about who's going to gain power over Libtulob, Jacob says. Cirilla, this sounds like something that you would be skilled in. Care to work with our sorcerer friends to calling the families of the lost and replicated in order to reunite some families? Of course, the Apuk woman says. She wears a robe/dress hybrid with slit sides at the legs to allow easier movement, and a large ornamental mantle as she walks up to Arden Karm and Jacob and gives both of them an inquiring look before nodding her head. I am Cirilla Amarl, fourth born and fourth in line. Now let's talk about who you have. Scene change. Unnamed grove of stone and sand. The bright forest, Libtulob system. Many of the young sorcerers had started to divide among themselves and talk and whisper as they all wondered what to do next. Many of them had gotten names back. But pushing past the brainwashing and the horrible things that were done to them and into the time before wasn't the most helpful. To make it worse, all of them had some memories, but none of them had full memories, which meant that even with the help of the forest, none of them had any way of knowing if they were clones or not. Some thought they were, because it was a lot easier and a lot less dangerous to clone someone important, even to put fake memories that would match up into them. But others said that what memories they had were too real, too perfect, too complete, and made them almost certain that they were the originals. The third sort of faction in the now somewhat divided Bright Forest were the ones who just didn't have anywhere to go, and they were worried about the others leaving, if they would be safe, if they would be alone if something else were to happen or occur. Apukimga, One of the older colonies, one of the sorcerer's muses as he sits on a stone. Not a world, a moon in orbit around a massive gas giant. He was trying to remember as much about his home as he could, and could only remember massive brass spires gleaming against the blue light of a beautiful world that shimmered like an enormous sapphire overhead. But the people, his family, it was still mostly a blur. Fancy clothing, traditional hoods with heavy ornamentation around the rim of the hood to operate as crowns while also doing double or triple duty as space-worthy suits while still being stylish. A flash, and there is the idea that he had gotten away with not bothering to groom his hair more than once because the omnipresence of raised hoods let him get away with that, with none the wiser. I had a pet Hargath. I wonder what happened to Cuddles, he notes to himself. Well, if there was another me left there, or the me there never left, then maybe they're still alive. Neon lights in geometric patterns between the spires, squares and circles and triangles that flashed as advertisement or just because they're pleasing to the eye. A counter to the blue light of the world that sparkled brighter than almost any moon in the galaxy, while the moon was behind it and the sun's bright white shine when they were on the other side. The brights, the darks, the quicker rotations that made keeping time its own thing. The longing for home is a physical thing, like a sphere of iron inside his chest. I really, really need to go home, he says to himself. Dunks? Another sorcerer asks. Fringes, he says, seeing the other son of Apuk Imga, one of the only Lidris of the forest, nicknamed for the off-color bright blue at the ends of his fins and claws, the brother of a baroness and the son of the head of the primary gas mining guild. Fringes holds out a hand with his central body. Wesker Bluefang, the Lidris says, and Dunks smirks. Bryn Imga, brother of Baroness Imga, although I think the current Baroness is my niece now. Wow. When we get back home, want to build some mushroom terrariums? I'd love to. I can probably swing for them to be protected by Baroness decree too. Wait, the Imgas are just barons? Don't they control all of Apuk Imga? Apuk Imga is a small moon with a very pretty city and a very lively mining guild. Besides that, the only thing that it has going for it is how close it is to Serbo, making it a pretty popular vacation spot for less rich Apuk that still want to travel a little. Oh, right. Sorry, I mostly remember things like the bot battles, ship repair, and Mom getting into a lot of debates with Apuk in fancy hoods. Probably my family. That's gonna make it weird. It's already weird up and down, Brynimga notes. Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 628. Tread softly around sorcerers. Are we going to be okay? Harvey asks. The Feely boy seemed incredibly uncertain, even as the gentle wing of Jacob rests upon his back. You're going to be okay, he assures the smaller sorcerer. But I'm different. I'm a copy of her father, not her son or brother, the night-black little boy says. He was wearing the bright coat from the stream uniform, and it was ribbed with so many polypore mushrooms that his entire form was completely blurred, and from behind he was basically invulnerable to kinetic attacks. It's okay, remember, no matter what happens, you have a place and family, Jacob assures him as he crouches down. The tiny sorcerer hugs him fiercely. Even through their bound to different forests, the sheer fear and uncertainty bleeds through. So many little things, unspoken, and just abject terror mixed with memories of abuse. Apparently there was some kind of fetish about night-black Feely in the dark of night. Something he was deeply aware of and had developed a fear of darkness in response. The other Bright Forest sorcerers crowd around as they wait in the Amaral throne room. The grickle grass isn't the most comfortable to stand on without boots, and many of the younger sorcerers have opted to go around barefoot. Do you think this will go well? Arden Karm asks Cyrilla Amaral. It should. By law, all clones that are aware are considered to share a citizenship with the baseline, and it wouldn't take much to change the name of the younger members or the older ones. It would be at most an interesting note in their legal paperwork, but not anything of legal concern. The issue is how people deal with the sudden revelation of being a clone. There are some pretty dramatic shows in history of men and women undergoing significant mental breaks when many people have learned they were clones at the same time. But that was mass production and exploitation. This is, it's still the result of mass exploitation, but we're healing. The goal is to make sure everyone has something, not to make them into something someone has. Ardenkarm considers. We'll just have to see. This is announcing Lady Amelie of the Core Duchy with escort and Lady Migo Haranat of House Haranat under the Margat Queendom, also with escort. And it's go time, Ardenkarm says. Calm yourself, young man. We're fine, she says, even as the small Apuk boy with bright red hair and the considerably smaller Cobes sort of semi-hide among the crowd, but look out. Saying is that this is highly unusual. I won't say good or bad, just unusual, which in its own right can be bad. The words of the Cobe ring out as she keeps a pace with the long strides of an Apuk noblewoman through use of a floating chair. Standing on a side extension is a bright blue Cobe that spots his smaller double immediately, and his eyes widen. Mother. In a moment, Aqualor, Lady Haranat says. Now you do believe me that an interruption to an announcement, let alone one so important as to disrupt the debates of whom gets to control an entire world, is most... Mother, just look, it's clear why we're here. Aqualor interrupts, and the irritated Lady Haranat turns her head. On and then the floating chair begins to drift and dip as her hands fly up to her muzzle. No, they did not, Lady Haranat exclaims in horror. The floating chair lands with a soft thud, and she launches herself off, flickers, and is suddenly right in front of the Sorcerer Aqualor, with a blast of axiom as her clumsy teleport is very energy intensive. She hefts him up and begins examining him. No, those monsters... Aqualor the Sorcerer tries to begin, but is suddenly pulled in for a tight hug as his mother refuses to hear anything and do anything other than hold her child close. No, the monsters, the wretched vile beasts, Migo Haranat breathes. Curse the fiends and their children too, Anterman, their children forever true. As the drama with Lady Haranat is occurring, Lady Amalakor lengthens her stride to the point where the difference between herself walking and sprinting is more academic. She picks up Chefkor the smaller and turns around immediately. We are going home now, she says, even as Chefkor the larger pauses and then nods as his mother approaches at nearly a dead run, and they and their entourage leave the palace in a blur. The larger Aqualor has now caught up with his mother and meets the gaze of his younger double before his eyes widen as there is something inside he recognizes. He purses his lips and shifts his jaw, about without opening his mouth before stepping to the side and looking straight up at Lady Cyrilla Amarl, Jacob, and Ardenkarm. The ones responsible for this, they are dead, yes? Were retribution out of Apuk legend? Oh yes, Jacob says. Okay, good. Come, mother, let us take him home. Aqualor the larger says, then pauses. He is a sorcerer then, bound to the very world that brutalized him? A world I have no recall of ever stepping foot upon? Yes, he is a sorcerer. As to being bound, again, yes. But also no. He doesn't have to go there. He doesn't have to be there. But he's part of it now, and it is a part of him. He carries it with him. Aqualor the larger takes a deep breath so large it nearly doubles the size of his torso, and slowly lets it out as he thinks. There is so much to do that starting alone will be a monumental feat. Regardless, thank you for breaking this to us so delicately and privately. I need, oh God, all of us are going to need so much. Excuse us. Aqualor the larger says before nodding and saluting Lady Cyrilla Marl at the same time and leading his group out, including his nearly incomprehensible mother, who point-blank refuses to let go of Aqualor the smaller, or even hint that she ever intends to. The door closes behind them with a bang. Well, that happened, Jacob remarks. What if it's worse for me, though, Harvey asks, his enormous green eyes shimmering. It was mothers with sons, not women with fathers, and Jacob crouches all the way down and rises up with Harvey in his wings. You are wanted, you have a place, you are loved. Remember, those three things stay true no matter what. If your daughter wants you, then all that becomes more true. But if she doesn't, then it doesn't become less true. Understand? Yeah, I understand. Thus, so were they. The closest to our location, however, next should be announcing Fleet Commander Lena Dearson. A servant calls forward, and the door opens again for a massive Agaric woman in a uniform similar to Theris Amaral. The larger, she scans the area and treading forward. Is this a mistake? Okopo Dearson asks. The small Carib boy just barely has his antlers budding to form their secondary points. But the moment he speaks up, Lena Dearson's gaze snaps to him, and she freezes. No! She breathes out before racing up and then stopping. They didn't. She reaches down and Okopo allows himself to be picked up, and she runs a thumb over his left antler. It can't be. Is there a mistake? You recognize me. Of course I do. I'm just trying to figure out why. You're supposed to be happily married away, and I had little. I'd if anything to ever do with Lilb Tulelb beyond occasionally protecting it during more tourist-intense seasons. But why would anyone, maybe her, but is she even capable of going that far? Who? Celeria Sycam, a businesswoman that tried to. Lena stops when she sees Jacob's feathers start flaring as his gaze grows intense. Do you know her? She's one of the highest-ranking member of the supple satisfaction I was able to personally identify. Her own blackmail material led to nearly a fifth of all arrests alone, Jacob answers. I saw you on the portion of the meeting released to the public. Already, Jacob asks, the ongoing deliberations are live and being broadcasted, but the initial portion is being played on repeat on the right channels. Gina says as she slowly stands with her capo and nods. Mother died young. My pirates took the last generation when I was barely more than a girl. It was always up to me to look out for the rest. I'm an old hand at this now. I will see you safe and warm, baby brother. She tucks the considerably smaller Okapo in tight and looks around. Is there anyone else of my family I should be aware of? Not to our knowledge, Jacob says. Good. Now, I will need to fill out some forms for official changes of status and take up some of my long, festering maternal leave. I have a baby to take care of. I'm 9, Okapo says. Barely weaned. Let's go, little Okapo. I cannot have another brother, for I do not have a mother. But you can be my son, she says as she carries out her brother-turned-son. The Lady Satha and Lady Rella have arrived. I was hoping they'd appear separately. What? Their homes are on opposite sides of the planet for a reason, Cirilla Amaral sighs. They're not too fond of the Amaral either, are they? Arden asks. No, they are not, Cirilla Amaral says with an annoyed tone as two Apuk noblewomen march into the room, heels clipping on the floor, both dressed like they can't decide if they're going to a ball or to a torture cellar, and both are clearly expecting for someone to shoot at them and have every intention to shoot back. If not for the clear hostility between them, they would be a study in complementing opposites, damn near color-negative reflections. Lady Amaral, they both begin and then stop to glare at the other as if she had been mortally insulted. Okay, what in the heck? Nardrella asks. Please tell me there's no stupid rivalry that started because some idiot slighted another and no one knows the meaning of the word de-escalation, Torn Satha moans. Hello, littler brother, Lady Setha states. Mother sent me to fetch you, sibling, Lady Rella states. Is this where the chains come out? I've had rapists approach less viciously, Nardrella asks. Yeah, no kidding. Last time someone looked at me like that, they made a point of breaking off my horns. Torn Satha says, and the glare from his sister intensifies. Lady, my ability to feel fear is a bit on the broken side. Try something else. This is starting to look like a complete mess, Nardrella notes. Announcing Miss Urathi, a servant calls out. Eris, well, it's not like they can't stop us from running if the beds are mainly made of nails. May need to grab our older counterparts and enact a rescue. That may be a little hard seeing as how you're stating it out loud and right in front of me. You little twit, Lady Rella hisses. Her younger brother just cocks an eyebrow and tilts his head back to look her dead in the eyes. Despite the differences, there are more than enough similarities in their faces and features to easily tell that they're related and closely. No, it won't be. In fact, I think I'm going to head home and check up on my brother without you. You will not be joining him. Come, Torn, Lady Satha orders, and both Torn and Naird look to each other and nod, then are gone. Jacob and Arden Carm glance to each other. They're borrowing the power of the lush forest, and both men can feel the seeds and dust flying through the air, even as Lady Satha and Lady Rella start arguing over whose fault this is. In short order, blades are drawn, and there is the smell of ozone as one of the gigantic weapons in the hands of the armored suits activates and points directly at the two seething noblewomen. My aim is sufficient enough that I won't even scorch the banners behind you. Do not, the guardswoman warns them. Excuse me, a feely woman with pure white fur and pink eyes says as she moves around the impending duel and then freezes at the sight of the boy in Jacob's wings. Her paws rise up to her face, and her eyes go wide before tearing up. She rushes forward, and in moments, Harvey Arathi is in her arms as she holds him close. What? Harvey asks. Shh. Just, shh. What happened? You died. Last month you died. Gone. And now. She holds out Harvey at arm's length a bit and examines him again before nodding and holding him close. We're going home. You were there for me. I'm here for you. We're going home. I died. I'm not losing you again, Gina Urathi insists as she outright sprints away in a seeming panic. Should we go after her? Arden Carm asks. I'll go. You deal with yin and yang here, Jacob says. Yin and yang. Human thing, Jacob says and vanishes in a swirl of dust. Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 629, treads softly around sorcerers. A shadow passes over Gina Urathi's head as she races for her air car, and the predatory shape of a Valran lands in the path. She pauses, confused. His stance and presence isn't hostile, but he's giving her an odd look. We need to talk a little. About what? I need to take him home and make sure that... I understand that, and I'm not going to stop you, but I do need to make sure you understand something. What? He's gone through a lot, his memories are blasted, and if you're looking for a replacement for HTE person you've lost, then it's just going to make things worse. What? What made you think that I'm going to do that? You said I'm not losing you again, Jacob says, but he holds his wings, still in a folded state, out to head off any argument. I'm just here to know if it was a slip of a tongue. Harvey has been through too much and, well, you've lost your father and now have a younger version of him. That can't be easy on you either. I just want to be sure this doesn't become a problem. Hey, it's okay, Harvey says. You can say that easily enough, but that's one of the most common lies around. I want to be sure is all. Then why not help Torn and Naird? Because their issue is a lot more straightforward and easily dealt with. If this goes wrong, it won't, Gina states. My father is gone. Whether the boy I hold is my original father turned into a child, and it was a clone I had loved and lived beside that I lost, or this is the clone of my father. It doesn't matter, he is family. He needs family right now, and so do I. In what way? Hawken, and when I lost my father, all I could think about was all the little ways of how I failed him, how I could have done better in this place or that, and how I just wasn't who they wanted me to be. And it doesn't matter how you lose someone. One of the biggest parts of grief is regret. Regret for things you've done and things you haven't done, that maybe things would be better if this or that was done or said, and I know he's not the father I lost, but I don't want regrets. All right then, it'd be tough to get better than that in this situation. Sorry for the interruption, Jacob begins to say as he moves out of the way. Gina rushes by him and into the air car. Bye, Jacob, Harvey calls out. It's not like visiting is going to be hard, Jacob calls out, and there is a slight chuckle from the tiny felly sorcerer. Andra, the fancy air car, takes off and soars away into the distance. Okay, back to it then. Scene change. Personal chamber overlooking gardens. Rella family palace. Soben ride. He sniffs lightly as he senses a presence at the window. He doesn't turn to look. He's been through this before and simply continues in his work. It was intended as a gift for his cousin, but she wouldn't mind if he tested it out first, especially as the outer casing wasn't quite finished yet. But still, it would be good to have a test firing of it, especially if it was as powerful as he assumed. The last few components are secured in place, and he hefts the small laser pistol composed of custom parts and with traceries of axiom ride replacing the Kutha. He turns with the weapon, which can vanish into a pocket, despite being a threat to a full-on starship, and he says as he sees a small, scruffy variant of himself sitting in his windowsill. Who were you expecting? Nardrella, the smaller, asks. Another suitor with more a sense of the dramatic than sense in general? Or another kidnapping attempt? Another? It only ever happened once, but you never forget, or perhaps you do, that you are here. Either that kidnapping attempt was fully successful and I've lived your life, or someone else got something from me. Nardrella the larger says as he deactivates the immensely overpowered laser pistol and sets it down at his private workbench. Something like that, Nardrella the younger states. Something is wrong. The larger states and the smaller nods. What is it? Do you need rescue? What? Oh no. She screwed up, didn't she? If by she, you mean that raging bitch of a... The smaller begins and the larger sighs. Let me guess. She arrived at the same time as a Satha woman who is basically her reflection? Does this happen a lot? There's something weird going on between the Rella and Satha families. We were once the Sala family before two prominent sisters earned favor with different queens and split the house. And every generation has the rivals born. Rella and Satha who hate each other and can't stop running into each other. So, are our families rivals? No, we're not. We're cousins. I'm making a gift even now to celebrate Dori Satha's recent engagement. This is weird then. There is something very odd going on in our families. No matter what happens, we mirror each other in the strangest of ways, and the rivals keep... Wait. Was Torn Satha also? Yes, he was. I really hope this isn't a second pattern appearing. Things are odd enough with the rivals. So it's every generation? Yeah, and it gets weirder. How? When the newest rivals are born, the older ones start diverging from each other and calm down, even becoming close friends most times. What? We don't know the cause of this, but it's a pattern. 23 generations long without fail, the rivals appear every single generation, but only the newest. How and why? The smaller asks, and the larger just shrugs. Weird. Yeah, anyway, since Brunarella screwed up, care for a tour of the estate from me? Or do you have some kind of issue with me? Should I? You got screwed over too, and while you got the posh life as the Baroness's son, I got incredible axiom power. So I think we're about even. I highly doubt that, but I'll take it, the larger says as he reaches up and slides down a cover over his workstation that makes it look like an ornament, then a practical place where he puts together custom laser weaponry. He latches it down and presses his thumb on the lock to seal it before covering it with the little ornamental piece. Come on, let's get you reacquainted with the family home. Just like that. No drama? You want drama? Well, it could spice things up. I can pay some actress to be the lover you jilted by being cloned and kidnapped if you want drama. Shouldn't take too long. It's part of the current storyline in that absolute drag of a show Zeddy's been watching. Zeddy? Older sister. What's she been watching? Garbage, pure undiluted garbage. So, who are the rivals? Brunarella and Worley Satha. Last generation, it was Morirella and Therasatha, the larger says before shrugging. This is just one of the strange things that lets us know we still have more to learn about the universe. So, you're just... What? Buddy, I'm a noble. No matter what I do, someone is judging it somewhere. Someone wants something out of me, and I only have so much control over my life. I don't even think I can run. You either go insane, hiding it well or poorly, or you grow used to it. And you? I think I'm used to it. Otherwise, I'm one of the more subtle kinds of insane, the larger says. She used to it? I only get so much control over my life, so I enjoy what control I have. I don't choose who I marry. I don't choose where I live. I rarely choose what I eat or when. But I can have hobbies, I can have growth, And right now I can have a little brother with weird powers who might be able to help me with something. What are you thinking? The smaller asks and the larger grins. Scene change. The streets outside, exterior Imperial Palace. Serbo. Well, that worked, Nardrella the larger notes as he looks clean at the opulent palace. Were you doubting? Nardrella the smaller on his back asks. I wasn't sure how complete the dark forest is over the world. It's kinda all over. I'm not just not all-consuming. I wonder why. It understands restraint. A literal bark-for-brains entity understands restraint, and members of our own family don't. Wow. Just wow. The larger notes. So I got some serious cash on me. Want to do the tourist thing? Won't there be trouble? Yes, but guess who's going to get most of it? Um, Seems a little mean to Brunarella. I mean, she's a bitch, but from the way you're saying it, she's kind of forced to be one? Oh, she's getting in trouble anyways. Just because the rivals keep happening, and we don't know why, doesn't mean that there isn't consequences for acting like the rivals. The fact that she basically scared you off means that she's getting it no matter what. This is just taking us well out of blast range. Still feels mean. Well, if you want to go back, you can take me back. Even if you don't want to go, the smaller asks and the larger shrugs. It doesn't matter that much. I can deal with it, he says, and there is a pulling sensation. The axiom echoes oddly, and he's suddenly back in his room, many, many light years away, and he raises his eyebrows in surprise. Does that ever get old? Hasn't yet. Very neat. The larger notes as he glances to the timepiece in his room. Minutes. 3 minutes to cross an immense distance, including time to mess around. Extraordinary. Yeah, but until my memories came back, I really didn't want to do much more than hide. How much do you remember? I know this was my room. What happened to that sintered weapon phase? Bad accident nearly killed me. I stayed away from analog weapons for a while, and it took a bit to sort out my head to even feel comfortable around sharper knives for a bit. What happened? Got careless and ended up with my left arm just off at the shoulder and my left side opened up. The blade only stopped when it hit the foundations after carving me up. Slashing its way through some very expensive and one-of-a-kind instruments and art pieces, I had to think fast and teleported into the pantry and forced the stasis on myself. I traumatized a couple of cooks, but it was that or die in seconds from blood loss. I stuck to powered weapons with safeties after that. Damn. I know, right? If I were anyone else, you'd have me beat for awful things happening. Nardrella the smaller says with a big smile. Got near anyone beat. Anyways, want to start the tour with the very pantry I used to save my life? Sure. Let's grab some snacks while we're at it. Deal. Talking about losing as much weight as I did that day always makes me hungry anyways. For something bloody, no doubt. No doubt. Scene change. Private gym. Sada family palace. Soben ride. The heavy thumping of feet on the reinforced treadmill and the apook at a dead sprint on top doesn't slow when there is suddenly a child on it. Granted, the child has to suddenly avoid a reflexive punch and then jumps away. Easy, killer, easy. This is my time. I am working and, oh no. The enormously strong apook man says as he deactivates the treadmill and stops his workout. He then leans his arms against it as he all but drinks in the cool air to regulate his body heat a little better. So they got me, or you, or whatever the hell is going on. Afraid so, Tornzatha the smaller says to Tornzatha the larger. Damn, so that's what they sent out Worley for. Is Worley the tight armored corset and massive skirt wearing which that looks like she's contemplating where to put your fingernails? And she ran into her rival. Just peachy. Rival? Yeah, we're cousins to the Rella, and there's some weird curse where every generation we basically have the same person in each family, and they just plain hate each other and can't get away from each other. No one knows how or why, but if we don't give her things to do or let her out of the house, then the problems come to us in short order. So we have to let it happen. What happened the last time they weren't allowed to run into each other? We had to rebuild the houses. Why? Both rivals got insanely paranoid and began stockpiling weapons, and they both eventually got the two halves of a bad shipment that went up and set off the other weapons. There were casualties, lots of them, including the rivals. Both families learned their lesson, and we let the crazies out on occasion. The only rule is that they're not allowed to start anything. And since both have that rule, it usually just means arguments and annoyance rather than blood. So what's she like when she's not about to kill someone? Honestly, I don't know. She's obsessed over Bruna and always thinking how to get one over on her. No matter what you talk about, it always swings back to how much she hates Bruna. And that's just weird. Yeah. So what were you doing? Working my body helps clear my head. Want to join in? Tornsatha the larger offers. Sure. Into a Wider Galaxy, Part 630. Tread softly around sorcerers. Are you sure? Tornsatha the larger asks. Go for it. Tornsatha the smaller says as his larger counterpart looks at the mushroom he has growing off a wall. It's a normal capped mushroom, just growing where it shouldn't and in the wrong direction, making the rusty red capped fungus look closer to a target than anything else. The larger shrugs and then throws a light punch into the cap. The mushroom is unmoved and Tornsatha, the larger, raises an eyebrow. Then he takes a wide stance, reels back, and then throws a massive punch directly into the mushroom. His fist stops and the mushroom is not damaged. He blinks at that. That's as hard as I can punch without axiom, and it's easily hard enough to shatter my own unaugmented bones if I strike something unyielding. Nah, but this thing does yield and completely absorb the impact, he says in a deeply interested tone. And, Tornsatha the smaller asks, I'm going to stress test this thing. Do it. The smaller cheers and Tornsatha the larger hauls back and throws a massive telegraph punch right into the mushroom as axiom dances through his form. It doesn't even make a sound. So he throws another with even more axiom. Then another. Then he gets into a rhythm as he punches faster and faster and faster, drawing in more and more axiom as the mushroom in unfazed by the barrage, even as Tornsatha the larger's punches grow to have so much force behind them that he's kicking up a small windstorm with his swings. Then there is a roaring final swing with a massive rush of axiom and a huge rush of air in all directions that actually rattles the exercise equipment, and he pauses, turns and looks around. I thought it was all bolted down better than that. Why do you know how to punch that hard? The smaller asks. It really helps when venting frustration, the larger says before chuckling, also for making a point. What happened? A local starship manufacturer was being inspected by Mother, and I was with her at the time. There had been some safety concerns, and it's a bit of a tradition to show up in person at random businesses for inspections to keep people on their game. Myra, the manufacturer, insisted that a model of ship was sturdy enough to resist slamming into the planet, and I disagreed before denting one of the ship's side in with a bare fist and sending it skidding into another, which continued on with it to crash into a third. Mother used it as an excuse to call up everything she could for a full inspection, and lo and behold, they were lying about the full thickness of the outer hull plating. By how much? Her ships were insured to last at least a century, barring combat or pilot error, but not a minute longer. She was effectively shaving down on the hull integrity to save on materials and force repeat customers. Over a century? Isn't that still a long time? It can be, but it's also why it needed a proper inspection to really find. I was just making a point and being a brat, giving Mother a perfectly acceptable in without it looking like she was overstepping power. But don't we rule? Rulership is a balance between the ruled and the ruler. If you can keep the people well entertained, feeling purposeful and well provided for, then generally there are few problems. But little things can build up if you insist on things too much. Granted, it can fade away, but it's best to be ahead on those kinds of things. That way you have some extra social and authoritative capital to get things done if there's an emergency or something you want to push through. So, nobility only remains nobility if they can avoid convincing their people that the price of deposing them is less than the price of suffering them further. Tornsatha the larger says. That sounded like a quote. It was. Our great A great-grandmother was a pretentious sort and made her words of wisdom as part of a few educational programs. Tornsetha the Larger says, right, well, I've vented, we've talked, and it's clear that neither of us are a dribbling maniac or programmed to go wild the moment we see another us. So we need to talk about more important things. Such as, Tornsetha the Smaller says, names. You're Tornsetha, and so am I. And unfortunately, there are enough idiots running around where something like that is going to legitimately get in the way of things. Tornsetha the Larger says as he heads to a nearby rack and quickly shakes himself before starting to layer on more clothing and goes from a man rippling in muscle to a man with simply broad shoulders and expensive silks. Okay, I can be awesome Tornsatha and you can be Tornsatha. Tornsatha, the Smaller says, and the Larger snorts in amusement. Maybe something else. The real question is, do you want the old name? Regardless of which one of us is the original, I've been wearing it and stretching it out for a while now. If people use it, they're going to think of me. Tornsatha the Larger says, and the Smaller considers. There is a sudden twist of axiom, and his broad left shoulder now has the Smaller sitting on it. Kinda makes me want to take it to see if I can't make it fit me, Tornsatha the Smaller says. But, well, the name isn't for our sake, is it? No. Then if it's for the dummies, then, what should my name be then? The Smaller asks. So you want me to hold the old name? You make a good point. And it makes sense, and I'll go with it. Not like I haven't had all sorts of changes, Tornsatha the Smaller says. Dare is a good name. Kinda common, though, Tornsatha the Larger says as they reach the door out of the gym, and he opens it. What made you think that was anything related to a good idea? A furious voice echoes through the building, and Tornsatha the Larger lets out a whistle. Well, that kicked open an old memory. Maybe I am the original, Tornsatha the Smaller exclaims. Why was she sent anyways? I said sent, but Warlisatha volunteered the moment she heard about some important and private family business. Yeah, but with the rival thing, you'd think you'd only let her out at controlled times or something. Try to keep a lid on things. Doesn't work, and that's cruel. She hasn't actually committed any crime. Bueno, it's not illegal to dislike someone, and, well, the question of just how much in the way of control she has over it is in question. We don't know if she's some kind of a puppet on a string or if something else is going on. Is she a victim? Is she the perpetrator? Is something else happening? For all we know, some sort of rancor spirit is inhabiting the empty vessel of her body, and the rivalry dying is the spirit taking up the next generation and freeing her. But she's been like that the whole time, and so she wouldn't know the difference between it being there and not, except she doesn't just mindlessly hate anymore. Sorry, Verosatha, a cousin of ours, he's a creative type, and for a gag put together the most outlandish series on the rivals imaginable. It was funny stuff. How big is the family? You and I are the main line. We're 68 strong. Eggs from both mother and her sister wives are incubating. The family likes to space out births between children so that they don't have a small army of screaming infants all at once. It's fairly traditional among noble families. The branches, however, are well-off business women and the occasional men. Many of them are trained as knights, courtiers, house guards, and the like. The main family may hold the power, but we reciprocate the loyalty of our cousins. Does that include the other cousins? If not for the rivals, it would. The more I hear about them, the more it sounds like a really weird conspiracy. Yes, that's also been looked into. The whole situation is supernaturally weird. We even tried to get around it for a few generations by not allowing any rivals to have children to see if it was blood-based, but no. If the line of the rivals doesn't reproduce, then it shows up in another line, and if they do have children, then only half of the time does the next generation appear there. I can't imagine a woman who's got an endless hate-on for someone else would be someone who could, get into a state to be able to lay eggs. Yeah, but if you can compliment the rivals for anything, it's that they're really, really dutiful. If they are told it is their duty to do something, then it is done. Maybe with a few fights in the way, because no matter what happens, they're synced up to the other. But it does work out. So, Has no one tried to, separate them? Couldn't, have one of them sent out on a long task in one place and the other in a distant one, so they have no chance of running into each other? Often, they run into each other anyways. Just last month, Worley was sent out as an attaché and observer to some of the sector defense fleets while Bruna was doing the same with Allied House Guards planetside to find holes in the defenses so they could be sealed up. Both serious jobs that were also so seriously far away from each other, it could be measured in light years. They ended up in direct communication with each other while the emergency channels and reinforcement beacons were being checked. It resulted in a 6-hour screaming fit at each other that no one with any sense of self-preservation wanted to be anywhere near. And no one interrupted? The interruptions made it worse. And whenever one happened, they'd get right back into contact with each other and accuse the other of base cowardice, duplicity, and then it would just keep going all over again, but somehow harder. Icom, this is so stupid. Yes, and there's no way around it? None anyone has found. And we have called on sorcerers before, made a full-on pilgrimage to the homeworld and outright kneeled under the boughs of the dark forest for help. The sorcerer that showed up was just as confused about everything as we were. Yes, that was odd, a new figure says, and Tornsatha the larger steps away before pausing. Please don't do that, he says, and Baraza Zor. The Bladebreaker shrugs. Why did you do that? I was paying attention, seeing how much I could see through from Serbo. But I heard part of the conversation and decided to help a touch. Have you learned anything else? Only that the humans have found out some new oddities. The rivals are an inexplicable oddity, like matriarch syndrome. It simply occurs with unknown mechanisms and sources, but predictable results. The humans have found some among their own ranks, and 2 of them have pushed it so far they've gained a greater understanding of it. Baraza Zor explains, and Tornsatha the smaller considers and closes his eyes as he sends a question to Jacob. Jacob sends a question elsewhere, and then relays the strange answer. They have 3 types. One is stealth-related, but they've found a way to toy with it. The other 2 are awareness. One always knows what he has, even if has no way to. And the other always knows if and from where they're being watched. Oh, if you can sense them, they can sense you. I hope they're not on Centris. That whole world is a crawling sprawl of cameras and stupid conspiracy. They are, apparently. And apparently, if there's something sufficiently weird, we can call them in to investigate. But they're going to be recording and documenting everything. Right now, Tornsatha the larger asks. Apparently not. Both of the specialists that can help and actually take in some information are apparently overworked and have been forced onto medically mandated breaks. Does that happen often with the humans? Tornsatha the smaller asks. Apparently yes, but the ones we have out here are exceptional ones. And I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. They're making the rest of us look listless and lazy. We are listless and lazy. Yeah, we have all the time to do whatever we want. So why not? By the way, what does listless mean? Tornsatha the smaller asks, and the laughter of his larger brother quickly follows.